This episode is brought to you by Shopify and Brevo. Do you want to level up your marketing fast? Meet Brevo, an all-in-one marketing and CRM platform that helps you to run email and SMS campaigns, manage leads, and automate follow-ups. Plus Aura, Brevo's AI assistant, helps you write smarter campaigns and optimize performance. Start free or use code ANYTHING50 to save 50% on starter and standard plans for the first 3 months of an annual subscription at brevo.com/anything. Shopify makes it easy to sell online and in person with customizable templates, built-in AI tools, and built-in marketing to help you reach your customers faster. The all-in-one commerce platform to start, run, and grow your business. Start your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/Kwame. That's shopify.com/KWAME. Welcome to this Negotiation Masterclass edition of Negotiate Anything. With over 1,600 episodes featuring some of the world's brightest minds, we've carefully curated 3 powerful conversations for you. What makes this so special is that you'll hear how different experts from different industries approach the same challenge in their own unique ways. Our goal is to give you multiple perspectives so you can build your own unique style. Success doesn't look the same for everyone, and in this masterclass, you will see exactly why. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, it's Kwame Christian, host of Negotiate Anything, asking you to please do not skip forward because this is not a commercial. Okay, I've got something for you. So we want to hear from you, our incredible listeners, because your feedback is super helpful in making the show even better. We've created a quick and fun form to get to know you, and this is your chance to make the show even closer to what you love. And here's the best part. If you fill out the form before December 31st, 2024, you'll be entered into a raffle to win a signed copy of my book delivered straight to your door. It only takes a few minutes, and your input will help to shape the future of Negotiate Anything. Find the form in the description of this episode. Thanks for helping us to make the show even better and even more connected to you. Good luck in the raffle. Crystal, thanks for joining us today.
I am so excited to be here, Kwame.
Yes, and we are excited to have you, my friend. So how would you get us started by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. Well, I tell people I do 2 things. I do insurance, which is the unsexy part of what I do. Unless you do it, it can be actually sexy. And then I help women learn and grow into a career that they truly love, that makes them overjoyed and happy and works for their life. And the reason I started doing that is because I found a way to create a career through corporate work, through working at a law firm, to transitioning to insurance, to becoming an investor and entrepreneur, and figured out how to make that work for my life and what I wanted and the vision that I had for myself, and really just exponentially bring happiness to my life. And I am so big on wanting to help women do that as well, and owning their worth and getting maximum value while doing that.
I love that. And also, make sure you let the listeners know about your new course that's coming out now too.
Yeah. So I have been working on a course called Salary Wise, which will have the 6-part framework I called Earn It, to help women figure out where they're going wrong and how to improve their ability to promote themselves. Because I always say humble doesn't pay the bills. How to get the market data that they need to put together the best package for themselves, and how to change their mindset to really hone in on what is unique and amazing and all the skills they've cultivated to go in and get the big ask, whether it's at their same company or whether it's going out and making a huge quantum leap to a new position. Because I just think that that is incumbent upon us, that women really struggle with what is our value and how do we define it and how do we talk about that. And once we can do that, and once we collectively are actually doing that, I think we'll see that pay gap, start closing, because the data shows us it's not a very big gap for women under the age of 30. But as you get older, the pay gap actually increases. And what I find fascinating about that, and fascinating in a negative way, is that our biggest earning years, and I say us, humans, people in general in America, the biggest earning years are in your 40s and 50s. If the pay gap is actually getting larger at those times, women are missing out on millions and millions and millions of dollars. And we've got to find a way to change that. We have to find a way to dig deep. And even if we aren't taught in our culture to talk about money or advocate for ourselves, we have to break out of that cycle, because our lives and our retirement and our joy and life satisfaction are really depending on it.
I agree. And that's why the work that you do is so important. And so I'm excited about the course. And listeners, of course, we have a link to the course in the description. So if you're interested, make sure you check out that link so you can learn how to make this happen for you. Because I think for me, one of the things that's so empowering about the way that you are approaching this is that you're giving people the tools, the mindset, and the skill set that's necessary in order to create the life of our dreams, but we have to understand how to actually get it done. And a big part of that is your perspective on value. And that's going to be our focus for today. Just this word value. And there's so many different ways that we can go through this, because we have the psychological sense internally. How are we valuing ourselves? How do other people value us? What is value as it relates to negotiation and what we're actually negotiating for? So I think a fun way to start off this conversation on value is talking about some of the misconceptions that people might have about the term. And so when you're coaching people and seeing people go through your programs, what are some thoughts that people have about the concept of value that are a little bit askew?
Yeah. So I will say that the number one thing that I find, I've talked to and I work with some men as well, but largely who I'm working with is women. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about is more women centric. It doesn't mean it doesn't apply to men. It's just that my experience is more largely focused on women. And the number one thing that women find with value is like, what is my inherent value and what value am I creating? The question around what their value is the number one issue. And if we don't understand our own value, how can we communicate our value? How can we raise awareness to our value? And how can we show others we should get paid for that value? And it's a really deep conversation to think about and have and dive into the issue, because I believe that it stems from us historically, women historically being caregivers, and there not being a monetary value that you can place upon that. And then our current culture in America, it's not really one where it supports women that are caregivers. It doesn't support women that are, say, not that it's anti-supportive, but you just don't see, there aren't commercials for that. We're not applauding women who decide to stay home. So if our nature, our like basic nature is not valued in our culture, then how do we translate our working value into something that we can talk about and share with other people? So I think that is where it's really just difficult from the outset for women. And then we're taught a lot of times, not specifically, this is like a subtle way that we're taught to be quiet and demure and good girls and yes and polite. So standing up and demanding and asking and saying, you know, I need this, I must have Y. Those are not things that we are taught to do. And the third issue kind of culturally is that women, nobody talks about money that much, first and foremost. But secondly, women definitely are not talking about money, the value, what you're doing, the work you're doing, what value it has, whether it's in the confines of your job, the greater environment, your town, whatever it may be. We're just not talking about those things. So I think the question is, how do I find the value? How do I know what my value is? It's not really, it's a big topic. It's not really something that's to the side or on the periphery of what people are experiencing. It is really front and center to what women are struggling with, is just, how do I figure out what my own value is? And then how do I communicate it to other people?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up, because it's really, really challenging. And we have to fully appreciate this challenge as well. Because if we are negotiating value, there's a lot of, it's almost like a quid pro quo type of thing. You give me this, I give you that. There's some way to ascertain the value that I'm bringing to the table. And then we can try to reverse engineer some compensation for that. But the scenario that you painted, that you brought to the table here is really interesting, because the example of being a caregiver. Everybody knows that's valuable. How would we put a price to that? We'll say, okay, this is priceless. Okay, that's a nice thing to say, but it makes it very hard to quantify too. And I can see how that can translate to the workplace as well. And when it comes to our ability to ascertain our own value and then communicate it to other people, where would you suggest somebody starts when it comes to figuring out how much value you bring to the table?
Yeah. So the first piece is really the internal value. And that can be a struggle for people if they haven't. I was listening to Mel Robbins on a podcast this morning who talks, a lot about mental and therapy type solution. And so in some ways, we have to get to that, right? That's like a first starting point for some people, because if you've grown up in a family or your first jobs, your college experiences did not create an inherent value with or a worth within yourself, that may be the starting point for some people. And I have worked with some women like that where they really had to do some deep work. They may have also needed to go into some kind of therapy, but we're not going to focus on that. I am definitely not a therapist, but it's understanding that we were born, and first and foremost, everybody has a value. Everybody has an inherent value that is not quantifiable, right? To your family, to your friends, to your children, to all those around you, you have a huge value. Find that, tap into that, and you really find that deep inner worth. When it comes to our true work histories, we have to look at what have we done? How have we brought value? Sometimes those are easy to identify in projects that you manage, savings that you have accumulated for the company, sales that you have made, deals you have done, acquisitions, divestitures, whatever they may be. They can have easy to identify. I used to actually joke with one of the tax directors that I'm working on the big construction project, and he was negotiating tax advantages with the county and the city. And I was like, wow, you're a moneymaker in some ways. So those are like easy to identify ways, but those aren't always the case. You're a lawyer by background. I'm a lawyer by background. Lawyers are a cost to the company. So how are you identifying places? Once you start thinking about it, that's the first hurdle. Then you can start working on identifying places. What are KPIs that you can work on? What are you doing? So many contracts? Are you working on so many invoices? Are you touching a certain number of clients? Are you making the lives easier of the people that are making money? What are the things that you are doing that you can do better than somebody else, or that is really a skill for you? And start just writing it down. It's not like a journaling exercise, but it's just like, what are the things that you're doing? And when you start reflecting on that in a strategic and thoughtful and intentional way, it will start coming together for you on what the value that you are providing for your job, for your role, for your company. And I think once you have a little arsenal, things that you have done and worked for, you will start seeing the value come alive for yourself.
Yeah, I love this. And so, two main points here. Answering the question, how have you brought value to the team, the organization, or whatever it is that you're negotiating with, whatever the entity happens to be, and then identifying how that value translates into KPIs. I think that's really strong because you're making it concrete at that point. And one of the things that I've recognized, pattern that I've started to see, is that sometimes it's easier for other people to see the value that you bring, because it's almost like we can become blind to our value because we bring it so consistently. We just assume that everybody does the same thing in the same way. And so sometimes asking somebody, what value do I bring to the table, is a great way to start to get an idea of how other people are seeing your value, which might lead to you increasing your own value, not in an inaccurate way, but with just more objective information that's coming from a different perspective.
Absolutely. And that is what, if you're really struggling to figure out what is my value, what am I doing because you're living it? Or what I've seen is that some people are challenged in the fact that they see that their job duties are just that. They're just duties. There's not really value. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Yes. But did you know that some other people are supposed to be doing those things and they aren't doing all those things? So the fact that you are doing your job Maybe you're doing it with a smile. Maybe you're doing it in a pleasant way that makes people want to talk to you. Maybe people are bringing ideas or their problems to you because you're an ideation person. I mean, think about the engagement that you have and the things that you're doing. And to your point, there's going to be a lot more brought to the table. And if you really are struggling, talk to some of your closest, either your friends or your colleagues that you work with, talk to regularly. I think most people have, some friendly people that they're working with. What do they think are your strengths? What are they see that you're doing really, really well? And that might be a good starting point, because if people have struggled for a long time to share their strengths and their worth and their value and what they're bringing, they may not see it when they look in the mirror. And so getting some outside perspectives can be really, really helpful.
Yep. I love it. I love it. And now let's stick with this theme of value, because one of the things that I know you've worked with people on is talking about expanding their perspective of value. Because when you're, for instance, negotiating salary, sometimes people can get just fixated on the number, just the salary, just the comp. And so can you tell us a little bit about the value, I guess the benefit of expanding your perspective of what value actually is in these negotiations?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're thinking about the value and we're talking about people negotiating their salary, negotiating the full compensation package, I am quick to say you are not the value of your salary. It's important for people to understand they are a separate and distinct person from whatever their salary value is. However, I do believe that to some degree, what you're being offered shows how the company is valuing you as an employee. And that's a good indicator for you to understand, are they valuing you in the same way you feel you should be valued? You want to have some alignment in those values, because if you are not aligned, that's where people start feeling unhappy. And if you're unhappy with how you're being valued compensation wise, it's going to bleed over to the rest of the work you're doing and to your overall happiness and satisfaction. And that is not going to make for a really great life. But when we talk specifically about what all you're going to be negotiating when it comes to a compensation package all in, there are a lot of different numbers besides salary. I mean, salary is obviously the biggest, most important for most of us, because that is going to be what we consider to be like the guaranteed income to yourself. But depending on what your job is, your bonus structure could be huge. I've seen people where their bonus structure could be up to 3 times their salary or more. You want to think about, what are the benefits? What are your health insurance? Nowadays, health and wellness is so expensive. You want to know that you're not going to be losing money if the program is not, the cost structure of the benefits program is not similar to what you have. You could have long-term stock incentives, which could make up a huge amount of your retirement or future. One woman I was working with recently, we were talking about what her work life is going to be going forward. And she would like it to be 52 to 54, but her long-term compensation in her stocks really vests heavily at between 55 and 60. So how much will you be losing out if you decide to exit working before that time? So those are the main things, but you also have other things to think about, like work remote. What are your working hours? How much flexibility are there? So there are multiple areas that you want to think about when it comes to the whole package of what you're negotiating. And what I usually tell people is you can't focus on every lever. You can pull a couple of levers, but you cannot, when you're going into negotiation, you cannot go in with the expectation that you're going to have something that you're asking for on 10 different points. That is not realistic or sustainable. And so what are the most important things that you want to identify and what you want to negotiate on, and pick 1, 2, maybe 3 if you're in a really hard to place position.
I love that. I love that, because one of the things that people might be experiencing is a little bit of overwhelm, because they might say, all right, well, now that I have this more expansive perspective of value, now there's so many options that I can pull on when it comes to these negotiations. But then at the same time, this should be really empowering and exciting, because we're recognizing that There are so many options. We can play around with this in so many different ways. And the key is to know really what it is that drives you, understand your core values, the things that are important to you, but at the same time, understanding what's important to the other side, and then trying to find opportunities for that interest overlap. Where are those points of synergy where I'm bringing value, you're bringing value, and we create value together? That means more value for both of us.
Absolutely. And you can do that whether you're looking for a new job or if you're negotiating a promotion or just a straight raise in your current position. And some of the compensation capabilities may not be presented to you. So you have to ask. And that's another thing that I think women aren't always aware of. Asking for, does this position offer any kind of bigger bonus potential? Does it have the potential to get stock options? And if you don't ask, you're not going to get. Just like if you don't ask for that raise, there's 100% likelihood that you're not going to get it because you did not ask. So if they're not presented to you, you may want to ask to see the full picture. And then remember, this is the most difficult thing for people when they're going in there and you're asking for something. You start conjuring up the feelings of the fear of rejection, the fear of judgment, the fear of failure, that if I'm asking for something, if I'm putting myself out there in the way, that I may lose the opportunity or that it's going to be a resounding no, which feels really bad to some people. And you have to remember that you want to know upfront, where does the value alignment come in? If you can't get to a meeting of the minds, it's not going to be the long-term place for you anyway, because feel your value is X, they see it as Y. Don't lower your standards to fit to somebody else's box. We have to stick with that. I'm not saying that, Kwame, sometimes there are occasions where somebody just needs a job and you've got to accept something that may be less than you think you're worth. There is a time and place for that. You have to be aware of if you're in one of those situations. But if you're not, if you have a good job, if you're fine where you're at, and you're just looking to make a big move, knowing up front that they're not going to bring you to the level that you want, it may not be the long-term play, right? You're moving somewhere so that you can find better alignment. And it's hard for people to understand until you start thinking about it, until you've experienced it. I have been there. I can assure you this is a real thing. 80% of the problems that people feel with their job are compounded if they are not being paid what they feel they are worth. They may not have thought about it. They may not have identified. They may not have pulled that number up. They may not have asked for it or negotiated it. But somewhere inside, they're feeling like I am worth more. They're not offering me more. And that is bleeding over into everything that they're touching. Once you start doing the work to get to where you're valued the way you value yourself, you're just going to have so much more happiness and satisfaction in your job. And so if it takes you 3 more months to find the right job, to negotiate the right amount, it always behooves you to wait.
I love it. Oh, that is powerful. I feel like that last point could be an episode by itself. This is really, really important. The new year always reminds me of the moment that changed my life. Growing up as a first-generation Caribbean American in small-town Ohio, I learned early what it felt like to be left out. That fear of rejection pushed me to become a people pleaser, someone who avoided conflict and said yes when I should have said no. But everything shifted when I discovered negotiation, because I realized that confidence isn't something you're born with. It's a skill that you build. And that belief is what eventually led me to start the American Negotiation Institute. And here's why I'm telling you this. A lot of people are walking into the new year with an idea that they've been sitting on for a while, something they know they could build but haven't acted on yet. The new year isn't magic. It just gives you permission to start. If that's you, 2026 is a great year to stop overthinking and start building. And the smartest move early on is removing friction. That's why I recommend starting with Shopify. Shopify gives you everything you need to sell online and in person. Millions of entrepreneurs have already made the leap, from first-time founders to global brands. You get hundreds of clean, customizable templates to match your brand. Shopify's built-in AI tools help you to write product descriptions, headlines, and even edit product photos, so you're not stuck staring at a blank screen. Marketing is built in too. You can create an email and social campaigns that reach customers wherever they scroll. And as you grow, Shopify grows with you. More orders, new markets, all managed from one dashboard. If confidence is a skill you build, execution is too. And having the right platform makes that a lot easier. In 2026, stop waiting and start selling with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/Kwame. Go to shopify.com/Kwame. That's shopify.com/Kwame. Hear your first this new year with Shopify by your side. Are you ready to take your business marketing to the next level? Meet Brevo, the all-in-one marketing CRM platform built to help you connect with customers, boost engagement, and grow your business smarter. With Brevo, you can manage all of your customer interactions in one place, nurture leads with their built-in CRM, reach your audience through emails and SMS, and keep them coming back with powerful automations. But here's where it gets really exciting. Meet Aura, Brevo's AI assistant. Aura helps you craft smarter campaigns by suggesting personalized content, optimizing send times, and even analyzing performance data to help you improve your strategy in real time. It's like having a marketing expert on your team 24/7. And of course, Brevo offers advanced analytics, seamless integrations, and AI-driven personalization, everything you need to create multi-channel campaigns that hit the mark every time. Get started for free today or use the code ANYTHING50 to save 50% on starter and standard plans for the first 3 months of an annual subscription. Just head to www.brevo.com/anything and take your marketing further with Brevo and Aura. And before we go, I just kind of want to put a bow on this too. I want to focus a bit on the point of asking, because it seems so obvious, but consistently we see in studies that this is one of the biggest barriers that people have when it comes to having these tough conversations. And so a lot of times people might just say, well, people are afraid of asking, so all they need to do is ask. Okay, well, yes, but there's something that's holding people back from doing that. So with the time we have left, can you talk about some of those mental barriers that might be holding people back from asking for what it is that they deserve?
Yeah. And I'll start by saying, to your point, it's a simple answer, right? You can't get without asking. It's simple. Just ask. However, it's simple, but not necessarily easy. And I always I just really believe that in life, like 90% of the answers are simple. They're right in front of us. It does not mean it's easy. But once we accept and pull in and see that it is simple, then we can get on the road to making the adjustments, to taking the difficult path, to doing the thing. And so what I think holds people back is, number one, they have a belief that they're worth it, but they don't really, truly, deep in their soul, believe that. So again, it's creating that repetition for ourselves to talk about the things that we've done, to promote ourselves, whether it's even just talking to your spouse or your friend. If you don't feel comfortable like going into a group team meeting and saying, I did this, look how amazing I am, I killed it in this conversation, I booked 5 appointments with clients, or whatever it is, then, share it with your spouse, share it with a friend, get comfortable bragging about yourself. Okay. If you're not going to pat yourself on the back, who's going to? And when people see that you are happy and excited about what you're doing, they're going to take that and they're going to share it around the organization, and that filters up to the higher levels. And so when you're valuing yourself in the way that you want to be valued and sharing the things that you've done, then it allows other people to celebrate and share with you. I think that is the biggest thing holding people back from asking, because they just haven't totally bought in themselves. And if you don't buy in, how are you going to get someone else to buy in? Get somebody else to see your value and your worth and go to bat for you? If it's a budgetary constraint, how are you going to have somebody go to bat for you if you don't truly believe it in your heart and soul as well? So you've got to believe it, and you've got to, find a way, do the mental work, put together whatever kind of template of a brag book that shows you. And then you got to own that. And you've got to allow other people to celebrate you too. The other thing is, I really think it's hard for people to accept that they may get a no. And what does that mean? And that feels really harsh to some people, even though people like me who just go out and ask for what they want. It's not that I don't have any feelings. I definitely get my feelings hurt when people tell me no. Even now, talk about this sometimes about my husband. We talk about trips, and 90% of the time, the first time I bring up a trip, he's going to say no. And it's always going to hurt my feelings. But at the end of the day, I'm going to keep asking because I know it's what I need. I know it's what he needs. I know it's what we need to do together. So I keep asking. But you have to practice that. You have to get out there and ask. And people have this fear of rejection that it just really is hard for some people. And so the more that you practice asking for something and you get adjusted to that rejection, and then you reshape it. Sometimes it's not just a rejection. What information am I taking away from this? What have they told me? Maybe there's something, maybe it's not today. Maybe I need to take some feedback. What was I missing in sharing with them? It's all the things that, like when you're talking about a negotiation, all information is good information, right? I'm taking it in, I'm synthesizing, I'm filtering it through. How can I come back to the table later and ask for more? But I think it's that fear of rejection that really holds people back. And then to another degree, it's a fear of judgment. I have to see my boss. I have to see my boss's boss. What are they going to think about me that I was asking? Who do I think I am? It's these kind of thoughts that people start having in their own minds and talk themselves out of just doing the thing, which is going in there and making the ask. Don't talk yourself out of it. Talk yourself into winning it. Okay? By changing your mindset, by changing your own version of yourself, by changing the thoughts that you're having about yourself. Because the thoughts that you have becomes actions, it becomes words, and then it becomes feelings that other people have towards you. You are projecting these things, even if you don't think you are.
Oh, that's good. I love this. And again, we have to recognize the internal game. Because they can listen to this podcast and know exactly what it is that they need to say. But if we don't address what internally is holding us back from putting these tools into action, then we're not going to do what needs to be done when it needs to be done. So, Crystal, this was great. I really, really appreciate you coming on the show again. And before you go, can you please just give the listeners a shout out, let them know about the course and how they can get in touch with you?
Absolutely. It's called Salary Wise. It will be launching in the next month or two. It will be an amazing 6-part for people that need more. I do some limited one-on-one coaching with people who really want to take it to the next level. But the course is built out to be super comprehensive, like every single thing you need, plus all the tools. I'm talking mindset work, meditations, the full thing. We've got comparison tools so that you can take an entire job offer and compare it to other job offers. It's got everything you need. And if you want in, we also have, I'll be talking about it more on my newsletter. And then I always talk about this and so much more, giving away a ton of content, a ton of tips, and often even have jobs to share with people on LinkedIn. I am at Crystal Ware Risk Strategist.
Love this. Crystal, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
That was the first part of today's masterclass. Up next, we'll hear from another expert with a different approach, giving you even more strategies to add to your toolkit. Let's keep it rolling. Maggie, thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for hosting me. It's a delight to speak with you as always, Kwame.
Yes, it is a pleasure to have you as always. So for the listeners who may have forgotten, and for our new listeners, can you remind them about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. My name is Maggie Palmer, and I'm the founder of a company called Pep Talk Her, and we're on a mission to close the gender pay gap. So we want you to get paid more and get promoted much faster.
I love it. And has anything interesting or new happened for you?
I was like, has anything happened? I've had a baby. So I'm getting better at negotiating with a newborn who can't really communicate. So that's been interesting.
Congratulations. Yes. So that's really
Thank you.
exciting. And listeners, this is incredible. Hugo must be the best behaved baby in the world because he's in the room and you can't hear him, which is incredible. So
he's meant to be napping. Long may it continue.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, when we have you on, Maggie, we always talk about careers, we talk about salary and everything
Right.
like that. And that's really important. And people might say, well, why are we having Maggie back on to talk about the same thing? And the reality is, things have changed. And so I want people to be able to have
Yeah.
the most updated information possible. But before we get into those tips, there's something really cool that I want you to tell the listeners about that you have going on in your company.
Yeah, so a lot's changed. So we're going to chat about how you can negotiate successfully in the current economic climate with inflation. So we're going to get to that. But I wanted to give a shout out to anyone who's listening who really wants to be earning more money or who's really looking to get promoted, right? So we run twice a year a free career challenge, and it's kicking off in about a week. So we would love to have you join us along with the American Negotiation Institute team as well, peptalkco.com/ANI. And you can join up to join the free 5-day training. I'm running the live training myself to help support you. So we would love to see as many of your listeners there.
This is great. And yes, listeners, live training for the price of a podcast. Okay. So make sure you check that out. We'll put a link in the description so you can get access to that. So Maggie, appreciate it. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, the Know Your Worth challenge. Because it's funny, like it's so interesting. I talk to professionals all day. And one of the things that I hear a lot, and I know you hear this as well with the work that you do, is people forget how awesome they are and how valuable they are. And that's really what the Know Your Worth challenge is all about, is reminding people you have value, you are contributing to your team, and you want to make sure that you're compensated for that.
Absolutely. And, when we think about negotiation skills, and getting the value that you deserve, it starts with knowing your own value, right? We have to understand the value that we bring to the table, and we're not going to be able to be effective unless we can articulate that in a way that is convincing to other people, but first convincing to ourselves as well. So this is really important.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think a lot of the time we think that the employer has all the power when it comes to negotiation. But actually, for great staff, as you and I know, running our own businesses, we want to retain top people. We want them to be happy. We want them to jump out of bed and be stoked to work hard for us. So the flip side of that is we actually want to compensate people well so that they feel that they're fairly paid, so that they feel excited and they feel that they're sort of being valued where they need to in market. So don't forget that you actually do have power in these conversations as well.
Absolutely. This is great. Well, yes, listeners, check out that link in the description. Sign up. And again, it's a free webinar workshop that Maggie's going to host. And we're going to give you a little bit of a sample of some of the brilliance of Maggie Palmer here in this episode. And so, yes, let's talk about what's changed since last time. I think it's been about a year since you've been on the pod to talk about salary negotiation and just career advancement in general. What are the main things that we need to pay attention to?
Yeah, and I want everyone listening today to just kind of reflect, like, what's happened to you and your career and what's happened to your pay packet? And has that pay been going up? Because if it hasn't, I've got some bad news. If you haven't had a raise in the last 12 months, then you've been sliding backwards, right? Because it's no secret that inflation is bananas right now, more than 8% for those of us who are based in the United States. And that's a problem because basically that's slicing and dicing your salary and taking the value away from you, right? So you need to be getting at least 8 or 9% increase in your salary this year just to keep up with the fact that the cost of living is rising at an incredibly fast pace right now, right? So, inflation, it sucks because when you go to the grocery store, as we've all noticed, it's getting expensive, but it's also, really slicing away at the value of your salary as well. So I want to make sure that everyone is really cognizant of that and conscious of the fact that you've got to be asking for a raise every year, particularly right now because of inflation.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for the people who are employers listening too, this is really important because you're a business owner, I'm a business owner, we have employees, and we are running and gunning all the time. We're very busy all the time. And it just is a reminder, again, for me, it's funny being on this side of the table now, right? It's a reminder for me that a lot of times as an employer, it's easy for me to just forget about these types of things. And so really, we have to take responsibility for our own careers if we are the employee to raise awareness and have these conversations, because a lot of times management, it just might slip their minds.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, you know, I think in any career, it's very easy to blame people, isn't it, at work? It's like, oh, my boss really sucks. Oh, my colleague really sucks. HR sucks, or whatever the case may be, you know. But actually, at some point, you've got to really take ownership of your career yourself. If you're not being paid fairly, if you feel like you're undervalued right now, which I hear from thousands of women in the Pep Talker community every year, if that's how you feel, I want to first just commiserate with you, because it really sucks. If you don't love your work, it's really tough. But at the same time, you can't expect your boss to fix everything for you, right? Your boss might have 10 direct reports, 5 direct reports, 50 direct reports. They've got a lot going on, right? They've got their own life as well. So you actually have to make sure that you're steering your career and taking control of it yourself. And that means raising how much you're paid every year. That means having that tough conversation, right? It means negotiating for your salary. It means talking to potentially other employers about maybe changing roles if you don't feel like the money that you're being paid is in line with your experience and is in line with the market right now, especially given the inflation figures that we're seeing.
Definitely. And like you said, it kind of ties into what we were talking about before when we were talking about the challenge that's in the description of the episode, right? Because we have to know what our worth is, but we also have to take responsibility for raising this awareness, having these types of conversations. And again, the actual strategy behind these conversations isn't usually the toughest part. It's usually overcoming that barrier. And so it might be fear. It might be a lack of self-worth, issues with your personal value. But then it also might be just the fact that you say, this is not my fault. This is their fault. They're to blame. Like you said, it's easy to blame. But a lot of times, especially if we're just blaming and commiserating with our buddies, we're not changing anything. And so we have to shift from focusing on fault to focusing on responsibility. All right, the situation isn't great. I want to be paid more. I deserve to be paid more. Great. So we need to take responsibility and then have those conversations. Hello, my friends. Before we get back to today's episode, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever wondered how to elevate your team's negotiation game and how you can help the folks on your team have better, difficult conversations? At the American Negotiation Institute, we offer transformative keynotes and workshops tailored to empower professionals with top-tier negotiation and conflict resolution skills. Whether it's a keynote for your next event or hands-on training for your team, we've got you covered. Don't just negotiate. Master the art with the American Negotiation Institute. Click the link in the description to find out more. Elevate, negotiate, and succeed.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think the other thing is one of the things that we do at Pep Talker is we're very focused on closing the gender pay gap. And I want to just acknowledge that the gender pay gap does exist and that's not our fault either, right? So we know that there's, depending on what country our listeners are in today, it's 15 to 20% gender pay gap for women. And we know that gap is significantly worse for women of color, right? So I just want to acknowledge that. And that pay gap is not our fault, right? So I really hope that we can get to a point, and I hope that we're on this podcast and if it's all gone and it's no longer an issue, although I doubt that's the case because the United Nations reckons we're looking at about 100 years before we close that gap. But in the meantime, before we can close that gap, before we wait for, big business and government to catch up with the policies that need to be put in place. In the meantime, there are things that we can do. And to your point, there are levels of personal responsibility that we can take to look to move from fault and from blame towards change and the change that you want to see in your career and the life that you want to lead, right? I want you all to be paid more. I want you to get promoted to the level where you should be, because when you get there, you'll be learning more and you'll be growing and you'll just be so much happier and you'll be contributing more to the business and the team as well.
100%. And Maggie, let's talk about this too. And this might be a little bit off of the typical directionality of a podcast episode focused on salary negotiation, because I think, especially when you think about the main goal of your company, the reason why it exists, which is to get rid of the gender pay gap, that's really important. Right. And then, so for the individuals listening to this episode, yes, negotiate, get what you deserve. And we're going to talk about specifically how to negotiate in these times. We're updating those skill sets for these types of conversations. But at the same time, now that we have awareness of what those pay gap is in the workplace, as you rise through the ranks of your company, you can keep an eye on that. Now you can be an advocate, you can be an ally, and you can take these exact same negotiation skills that you're using to advocate for yourself and advocate on behalf of others, on behalf of the group, to create the structural change within organizations that we need to see in order to eliminate the wage gap too.
It's so important, the point that you make, right? Because everyone listening today has the capacity to help create that change, right? To create a more equitable workplace, to create a world in which the gender pay gap no longer exists, right? I was at an event recently with Julia Gillard, the former Australian Prime Minister, and she said something which I think was really interesting. She said, with every wave of change comes the inevitable backwash as well. And I think that's interesting, right? Like, we are making progress and we know that we're sort of inching closer to a more equitable world. We're seeing more women in leadership. We're seeing more people of color moving into more senior roles in the businesses, as they absolutely should be. And yet with that, you know, there's a price that a lot of people pay for that progress, right? And it means that sometimes you're going to have to walk away from companies where you don't feel like you're being paid or treated fairly or equitably, or where you see behavior that doesn't align with your values. And if we say nothing and if we do nothing when this happens, it's just going to perpetuate it, right? And it's going to continue to be unfair and unjust for others. And so I do want to sort of give a bit of a call to arms, I suppose, for everyone listening. Like, take on the role of stepping into a place of courage and calling things out in the workplace when you see things that are happening that are unfair and that are inequitable. And when you have the capacity to hire, and when you're influencing payroll, you know, ask for there to be pay transparency. Ask for there to be, you know, a level setting of what are people paid in different roles within the business. You know, like, we have the capacity to enforce and to sort of, you know, encourage our companies and our employers to create that change quicker than maybe they would if we just sat back and just allowed the status quo to continue.
Yes, I appreciate this little aside, because it wasn't little at all. It was very, very important. And I think if we can just get one person to say, you know what, there is something I can do. You know what, maybe
Totally.
it's worth negotiating into that next level, because that next level of authority gives me more influence over these types of challenges too. So this is really important. And so let's get into the actual X's and O's of this. Let's talk about the strategy. When we're thinking about the major challenges that people are going to have when it comes to these salary discussions today, what are the things that people need to watch out for?
So here's the thing that I hear a lot when people are saying, oh, you know, I'm really nervous about negotiating, like, my salary, I don't want to be seen as high maintenance, all those kinds of things. The thing is that if you prepare for these conversations, you can actually map out in advance what's going to happen, right? Because in any salary negotiation, there's really only three options, right? They can say yes, they can say no, or they can say maybe, right? So there's really only the three options, and you can actually prepare in advance. And I always say to people, there's three ingredients for a successful negotiation. And the most important one, even though it's not very sexy, it's not very exciting, the most important ingredient for a successful negotiation is preparation. It's preparing in advance. And if you have a salary negotiation conversation this afternoon and you prepare at lunchtime, like, if you're asking for $500 extra a year, okay, that's probably enough time. But if you're looking to get a $5,000 increase, an $8,000 increase, a $20,000 increase or more, which we see a lot within the pep talker community, if you're looking for a significant jump, then you'd better put in significant preparation, right? Because you've got to make sure that it's not just, oh, I want more money. It's putting the meat on the bone. Why do you want more money? What have you contributed? How have you added to the team culture? How have you added to the team's bottom line? How have you made the business more profitable this year? And, you know, I know we've spoken about this before, Kwame, but one of the reasons why we built the Pep Talker app was for this exact reason, because I can't tell you what I had for breakfast last week. And it's not just because I have a newborn at home. It's because our brains can only retain so much information, right? And so you probably, and let me know, listeners, let Kwame and I know on social media, send us a DM or tag us and let us know, can you remember the exact project that you did that was a huge success? Because if you can't, you actually need to be tracking those successes more regularly, right? And that's what the Pep Talker app helps you do, is it helps you remember in the moment, in the week, the successes that you've had. So we actually say that you should be reflecting at least once a week on what you've contributed? Did you organize an internship program? Did you add an extra sale to the bottom line of the business? Did you organize the holiday party? Whatever it is, write it down now, because chances are you're like me and you won't be able to remember in 12 months' time when you're having your review. So if you reflect once a week, even if you miss a couple of weeks, if you reflect once a week, ostensibly you could be walking into your next review conversation with 40 to 50 things that you've done that you're really proud of. And then it's very easy to say to your boss, hey, listen, I've done A, B, C and X, Y, Z, and I've contributed in this percentage or in this revenue line or whatever. These are the reasons why I'd really love to discuss my compensation moving forward, because you've got the reasons to sort of back up your case and your argument for that increase in salary.
Oh, this is so good. And I know, Maggie, you're like, I know I do this all the time. That's what I help. I help thousands of women around the world. I know it's good, but this is great. And everybody, these are the kind of friends you need to have. The friends who just casually drop that they have an app, in the middle of a conversation, like it's nothing. But yes, Maggie has an app and it's brilliant. And actually, Maggie, since we've been talking, I actually started to compile my own lists of wins, because I think it's beneficial. Oh yeah. So it's really beneficial for a couple of reasons. Like you said, it's beneficial because you can say, oh, why am I awesome? Let me tell them. This is the reason why I deserve a raise, right?
Yes.
Very clearly.
Love that.
And so it clearly helps with the external negotiation. But I think the thing that people often overlook is that it helps with the internal negotiation as well. Because when I'm down, when I'm feeling a little bit sad or insecure or whatever, because that happens to everybody, sometimes you forget how awesome you are. Yeah. And so anytime anybody says something nice to me, I put it in a note document that says compliments and brag box. And I will just read through that until I feel better. And so this is something that you use to convince yourself as well as the other party of why you deserve what you are asking for.
And I love that you do that. And thank you for sharing that, because, it is, and we all have bad days, right? We all have bad days in life, at work. Maybe you have a fight with your partner or your best friend or whatever, and you're like, oh, am I even any good? What am I even doing? Can I even do this job? The client said no, or, my boss had to reprimand me. Oh my gosh. And you spiral, right? Like we spiral as humans. And so what we know is, though, the way that the brain works is quite cheeky, right? And so there's these neurons that fire in our brain. And so if we are in a regular cycle of spiraling, thinking that we're no good, or really taking constructive criticism to heart, we can spiral in a negative way, right? And that really erodes our self-confidence, right? And how we're perceived in a confidence sense by others. And that's one of the things that we talk about in the Know Your Worth Challenge as well. What we actually want to do is strengthen the neural pathways when you're not spiraling. And we want to strengthen those pathways, to your point, Kwame, when you feel good about yourself, when you're receiving a compliment, when you've excelled at work, when you've received compliments and praise from your boss and clients and colleagues. Those are the parts of the brain that we want to strengthen. And I always harp on about this, but it's kind of like if I wanted massive biceps, I'd have to go to the gym and, flex those muscles every day. And nothing's going to happen the first week. I'm going to be a bit sore, but nothing's going to happen. The first month, I might be a bit toned, and then maybe then I have biceps a bit more like Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? But it takes time. You've got to strengthen that muscle. And it's the same thing with our mindset around how confident we feel in and of ourselves, and how confident we feel about our ability to contribute positively to the team and to our job. Because I'm sure everyone listening has got someone at work that they know who's very confident and who holds themselves with a lot of swagger, right? And who really backs themselves. And like the reality is that when you are confident and when you believe in yourself and when you know you're adding value, the way that you are perceived in a negotiation goes up. And it's a lot harder to say no to someone who's got the data from the app, who's got the confidence, and who's really, constructively engaging in a conversation about how you can find a mutual agreement on salary going forward, versus negotiating with someone who's like, oh yeah, please, can I have a raise? Like even the tone of my voice, then it's not very, endearing. So all of these things, when you put them together, they really do contribute to the success or failure of a negotiation.
I love it. This is so powerful. And that is why I love having you on the show all the time. So I appreciate it, Maggie. And before you go, please remind the listeners about you, your company in general, and again about the awesome opportunity you have coming up.
Yeah, well, I love this podcast. I'm a bit of a nerd and I'm obsessed. I'm an obsessive listener. So shout out to anyone else listening who's in the same boat. Please say hi to Kwame and I on LinkedIn. We are on the social medias as well. I'm at Pep Talk Her. My name's Maggie Palmer. Please find me on LinkedIn and say hi as well. But yeah, Pep Talk Her is my company. You can check out the app on the Apple App Stores and the Android App Stores, Pep Talk Her, HER. And this is super exciting. And this is for all of the podcast listeners today. We've got a free 5-day Know Your Worth challenge, which I am personally live coaching you in how to know your worth so that you walk into your negotiations with confidence and with the skills and the scripts that you need and the playbooks to get a successful outcome. I want you to get a 10K raise. I'm going to show you how to do that during the 5 days. It's totally free, no strings attached, etc. So you can check it out, peptalkher.com/ANI. So I'm excited to see you in there. We've had a lot of ANI listeners and members of the community come through the program, and they've gotten things like 15% pay raises, 20% pay raises, 17 grand extra. We've actually had three, would you believe it, three $100,000 plus pay increases, which is pretty wild. But we're very proud of that. But typically people see at least a 5K raise, and then anything up from there, it kind of spans that spectrum. So I'm excited to help support your really, crush the career for the rest of the year.
Love it. Maggie, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. You've just heard one powerful perspective, and now we're moving on to the next, a fresh voice with a new angle on the same challenge so you can keep expanding your skills. Let's dive in. Ben, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you, man. So how about you get us started by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, happy to. So my name is Ben Cook. I'm CEO of a negotiation startup called Riva HQ. What we do is salary negotiations. So basic premise is that 2/3 of people today don't negotiate salary. Main reason why is a combination of they don't know how, and negotiation is an intimidating, scary process for the majority of people. But the unfortunate fact is by not negotiating, people put themselves on a slower career trajectory. They settle for less today. That impacts their raise tomorrow, and so on and so forth throughout the course of their career. It ends up costing the average individual about $1 million in foregone wages, or collectively about $188 billion that gets left on the table by Americans every day. That's what Riva does. We try to solve that problem. We try to help end the pay gap through ending what we call a hidden negotiation gap. And I came to Riva by way of some research I was doing at Harvard Business School on social media negotiation, how to negotiate in the digital age, how negotiation strategies shift when you move into a digital ecosystem. And I brought that work, through a bunch of lecturing and publishing at HBS and working with the US Congress to try to break some of the gridlock that gets in the way of making popular bipartisan deals, thanks to a lot of very vocal, very angry, but in the minority people on social media.
Wow. This is quite impressive. Quite impressive. So I appreciate you joining us because the work that you're doing is very important on a number of different levels. And so listeners, Ben and I were chatting beforehand and we're trying to figure out what angle do we go, because salary negotiation with Riva would be the obvious one. And then also thinking about, we're coming up on, as always, political season here in the US, but elections are coming up, right? So we have to have those negotiations. That's important too. But what we started to realize is that most people they understand the importance of negotiation, that it's an important skill, but still that logical understanding isn't enough to get them to take the step to actually negotiate, right? And so today we're going to talk about the mindset of a negotiator and what that really means and how we can improve our mindset in a way that will then improve our ability to show up and actually have these negotiations effectively. So Ben, when you think about mindset and you think about like all of the work that you've done in these various industries, what would you say is like the biggest revelation that you've realized through this process for you?
Such a good question. I think when I was working at HBS, surrounded by other negotiators, talking to people who negotiate all day, every day, I'm a negotiation nerd, right? I loved it. They all loved it. We were all like, negotiation is the best thing ever. Who wouldn't? It's playing chess, but in the real world, it's all of the complexities, all the value creation that can come out of it. I'm a fan. It's what I love. It wasn't until I started doing Riva and trying to reach that group. We call them the negotiation hesitant, and it's exactly what you described, right? These are people who. It's not that they don't know that negotiation is important. I mean, there's been such a cultural mindset shift, particularly as it relates to pay gap and being able to advocate for yourself effectively. There's been so much cultural chatter about how it's really important to negotiate. But when it comes down to actually getting in that room and having that conversation, 2/3 of people don't do it. So that was, I think, a big sort of lesson for me to try and understand what that was, what's driving that. So we've had about 5,000 clients come through Riva now. And I think the biggest thing that I've come to learn is that for most people, negotiation feels like conflict. Right? They have this mental image in their mind of, two people sitting on opposite sides of the table and, making steely eye contact and, firm handshakes until one person blinks and now, negotiation over. It feels like an argument. People hate arguing. People hate conflict. And the last thing they want to do, particularly when it comes to like a job negotiation, either you're going to have to, it's a raise and you're going to have to do this with your boss. So that sucks. Or it's a new job offer and you just got out of weeks spent looking for a new job. You're nervous, you're excited. This is, this whole new chapter in your life. And the last thing you want to do is what feels like put all that in jeopardy by suddenly introducing conflict. So I think most people have that mental image where negotiation is an argument. For me, that's literally couldn't be further from the truth. Negotiation is about two people who have a shared goal, right? We always say this with hiring, right? At the end of the day, your shared goal is that you want to work together. Whoever you're talking to, right? They want to retain you. They want you on their team. Everyone's goal at the end of this conversation is for you to be teammates. So that's not a conflict situation. That's two people sitting on the same side of the table, jointly problem solving, coming up with creative ways to get around the roadblocks that are getting in the way of a really exciting next chapter, a bunch of value creation coming together. So I think that's, for me, like the biggest mindset shift is just moving from thinking, oh, negotiation is a big argument to negotiation is about working together to overcome the barriers that stand in the way of what you both want to do.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said, because you're exactly right. It's a collaborative problem-solving endeavor. And I know for me, whenever people say, well, how do you appear in a negotiation? How do you carry yourself in a negotiation? I say, listen to my podcast. I mean, the conversation, like the tone I'm having with you, like this is how my negotiations feel. And I think we blow this way out of proportion. And so I think a lot of listeners would say, okay, listen, I like this Ben guy. All right. I understand what he's saying. Logically, again, it makes sense. Now, you've had the opportunity to work with and serve over 5,000 clients with Riva, which is just spectacular. Kudos to you on that. And when you actually get into the minds of your clients, I'm assuming, and I might be wrong on this, Ben, so you correct me if I'm wrong, that there's still a little bit of a block sometimes where you can share that information and say, this should be problem solving. You're working toward the same goal. And they might have an intellectual understanding of what that means, but then there's still a barrier. What is that barrier?
I think there is it's the taking the plunge moment, right? People, again, like they hear me say that, like, yeah, this should be problem solving, but it is literally that moment when you press send on the email, when you walk into the room and there you are, and oh my God, I'm suddenly going to have to go through with this. So this comes up a lot, right? People will tell them, okay, your best way to build leverage, right, is to get your existing employer to want to retain you, maybe a couple competing offers, create a multi-party bidding war. Then it's great, right? Because you don't have to be the bad guy saying, pay me more money. You're saying, I don't know, right? Like I really want to stay. I really see great opportunities in this new company. Help me make this decision a little bit easier, right? People get that intellectually, but then there's that moment where, oh God, I got to actually do the thing. And I think people really build it up as this thing that you either can do or you can't, right? It's either this, there are people who can negotiate, and they're people like me, and that just feels so anathema to the way I lived my whole life. I never negotiate, right? So I think there's two things that kind of get through to people. The first is, they say, "Oh, I never negotiate," and you're like, "Well, listen, are you a parent? If you have a kid, I guarantee you negotiate all the time, constantly, every day. Do you have a partner, a spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend? Guarantee there's some negotiation, right? Because again, it's two people with the same goal, live harmoniously together, raise a happy kid, et cetera, but there are roadblocks in the way. And so how you navigate around those roadblocks together is negotiation. I mean, okay, maybe it doesn't take place in a boardroom, but it's the exact same skill set. The other thing is this mentality of, there are people who can negotiate and there are people who can't. One of the things we tell Reba clients all the time is, I know you're scared, you're nervous, you're intimidated to do this today, but developing this skill set is going to serve you for literally decades to come. This is not the sort of thing where you either are born as a negotiator or you're not. It's a muscle. The more comfortable you get with it, the more you do it, the more you show yourself, you prove actually in your own lived experience that negotiating doesn't backfire. People don't actually yell at you. You don't get kicked out immediately when you go talk to your boss. Actually, most of the time, people respect you more. It leads to more durable relationships. It leads to more trust because it's based on a foundation of openness and honesty and saying, here are the ways, here are my roadblocks, right? Here are the things that are getting in the way for me. I want to overcome them. That's the foundation for a really healthy relationship. And when people actually have that felt experience, when they take that first plunge, it gets easier and easier and easier over time. So, yeah, it's a muscle. It's not like a born with you. One day, you either are or you aren't.
Exactly. Well said. Well said. And I like what you said. Let me do a little bit of a summary. So the fear, actually taking the plunge, right? Because we all have that fear, but then there is like an elevated level of fear when it's like, oh, it's do or die right now. This is when you do it. And then people can say yay or nay, and they often say nay at that point. And I think one of the things that's tough is that nothing's really forcing you to do it. It's an option. And especially in the salary negotiation context, it would be much easier for the employer to give you an offer and you just accept it. That just makes their job easier. They save money and save time and effort. So they're not going to say, Ben, are you sure you don't want to negotiate with me on this? That's just not how it happens. So we miss out on those opportunities because we don't make that decision. The other thing is talking about the mindset. Let's go to that great book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, where she talks about the differences between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, where it's almost like the distinction between believing in skills versus talents. So somebody who has a fixed mindset, they say it's a talent. Either you have it or you don't. And if you're not a born negotiator, you're not going to become a negotiator. It's done, determined at birth. But with the growth mindset, you realize, no, this is a skill that I can develop with time. And so for me, I'm a recovering people pleaser. I used to be deathly afraid of difficult conversations. And that's why I built this whole company. Because once I went to law school and discovered negotiation, and I learned that I could actually get better at it, I became addicted. And I just wanted to be able to share it with as many people as possible because you can improve. But I think if we stay in that fixed mindset too long, it becomes a rigid identity where it's not like I'm afraid of negotiating, but I can improve my skills and confidence and then and then effectively negotiate. They say, I never negotiate, and they state it as if it is a stable and static identity. I am one who does not negotiate. And so when we think about identity, a lot of times we make identity-based decisions. What does a person like me do in a situation like this? Well, I'm a guy who doesn't negotiate. What are you going to do? I'm not going to negotiate. Right. And so I think it really holds us back, and we don't realize how much we are holding ourselves back in these conversations.
Totally. I love that. And you're totally right. Right. This is textbook Carol Dweck. Right. If you have that growth mindset, like, yes, this is not just a core part of my identity. This is not there's no gene that correlates. Yes, you are a negotiator. No, you're not. But it's really funny. And what you just said, right? So you had this experience. You went to law school. You were like, oh, I can negotiate. It's really funny to me how many people you would think, based on their job, based on their experience, how many of them still have that hesitancy. We get so many clients who negotiate every day on behalf of their employer, but when it comes to advocating for themselves, oh God, no way, couldn't do it. It's really funny how people will just put on those sort of identity-based hats and then make identity-based decisions. It actually brings me to one of the things I'm involved with on the side, which is this program to help train Congress how to negotiate more effectively. So we work with congressional members and their staff on, senior staff that are the legislative aides doing most of the work behind the scenes on basic negotiation techniques. And, it was when you made that comment about identity-based decisions that I think that really stuck out to me, because so much of the gridlock there is people making those identity-based decisions. They're saying, oh, well, I am a Democrat or I am a Republican from this district. And, based on that identity, I'm going to say yes or no categorically to any piece of legislation that looks like this. When you get them, so the exercise we do is we'll try to get, we assign little negotiation exercises, and we assign Republicans to play Democrat roles, and we assign Democrats to play Republican roles. So they are forced to stop thinking about these issues in the way that their identity naturally would lead them to think. And instead, they start looking at the negotiation process as, we make it a game, right? It's a little fun exercise. It's scored. You get points for, winning on this issue versus winning on that issue, making trade-offs. When they start thinking that way, they do so much better. They have these huge breakthroughs, and everyone ends up way better off because they were able to overcome those roadblocks, work together, accomplish something. They end up better off. Their constituents end up better off. The country ends up better off. But it's getting out of that, here I am, this is my fixed identity, I'm going to make a decision accordingly, and instead think about, a huge part of negotiation is empathy. Right? It's understanding the other person's point of view, what's important to them, understanding what's important to me, mirror those things together. Hey, there's a lot of overlap. How do we make that happen? So I love that. It's the more you can think holistically about yourself, about the other party, empathize with both, think creatively, and not just go, yeah, I'm X, I'm not a negotiator, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, end of story.
Exactly. And I think, and I'd be interested to get your thoughts on this, because I think it's okay to make identity-based decisions if you're using the right identity. But I think a lot of times we use the wrong identity. Like, it's a unnecessarily limiting identity. So I'll give an example. So I want to make sure what I'd think about is, if I am experiencing weakness in some way, I want to make sure there's some kind of mechanism that helps me to still make the right decision. So I recognize if I'm super emotional, I'm not thinking clearly. And so there has to be something in place that kind of overrides that. So I'll give a kind of a fun example that pulls us out of the negotiation context. So I've been traveling a lot. I for the next month and a half, there's a trip every single week. And airport food is not healthy. Okay, not healthy. And I often don't schedule my days very well, where I'm rushing to the airport late, and then like it's my first time every single time, and now I'm starving in an airport. And so I go past these greasy spots, and I'm like, that oil smells delicious. Let me go get me some of that. And so I slow down and I say, Kwame, think like an athlete. What would an athlete eat? If an athlete were in this situation, what food choice would they make? So yeah, I went past the fried food, walked 10 extra minutes, got a healthy burrito bowl type of thing. Right. And so that identity that I wanted to embrace helped me. So when I think about the difficult conversations I have sometimes with my wife, for example, I'm not Kwame the lawyer. Whitney has told me she does not enjoy Kwame the lawyer. Right? What does Kwame the loving husband do? Or when I'm with my kids, what does Kwame the patient father do? Now in the workplace, what does Kwame the negotiator do? If I see myself as a negotiator, what are the things that a negotiator would do? A negotiator, first of all, would negotiate. Let's just start there. Second of all, the negotiator would empathize, because I'm not going to go in here just completely oriented toward myself and my own goals. A negotiator would start off by empathizing and understanding the other side, right? A negotiator would actually think about how we could potentially make this a win-win, consider your goals and move in that direction. And so I think we have to think really critically about our mindset as it relates to our identity, which identities are serving us in the moment and which ones are limiting us, and then how we could flex it as necessary.
I love that. You know, I was mentioning, so when I first took over Reba, we built this fully automated product, and it worked. It was great, right? People would use this sort of a chatbot experience, and it would devise their negotiating strategy, write up a customized email for them, send it off, you send back. Really, really impressive from a technological standpoint. But what it didn't do was meet people where they are, empathize with them. And then I think the biggest thing, so what we moved to was a coaching-based product. The biggest thing that the coaches do is they connect your negotiation to your identity, to your personal goals. And so, you know, so many people come in and they're right, every client, right? They're like, I don't want to be greedy. Like, you know, it feels so money grubbing. I'm asking for more money. I'm so uncomfortable doing it. I don't want to be greedy, but, you know, and it really is, you know, it's really hard. You know, my partner and I are wanting to start a family, and we have certain financial goals we need to hit before we get there. Or my kids are entering high school. I see college tuition coming. I know that's going to be really expensive. I want to provide for them. Or even, you know, it's some of the like cute ones, right? You know, I want to propose, but I got to save up for the ring, right? You connect it to, here are these personal goals, right? Those are not selfish, greedy, money grubbing goals. Wanting to be able to put your kids through college, that is not you being, you know, some kind of like greedy jerk. This is about you being, and this is what I loved in what you just said, right? You are the father. You are the mother. You are providing for the people you care about. You are providing for, you know, the opportunity to get married, whatever it may be, whatever your personal goal is. When you connect it back to that, and then the coach can remind you that that's what you told me in our first session. So don't back down now, right? This isn't about you. This isn't about, you know, oh, I'm trying to advance my career, do this, get a little bit more cash so I can buy something nice. I mean, that's fine too. But so often, you know, when you remind someone of who they are, what their goals are, and, you know, what that identity is that's going to serve them in that moment, and you can reinforce it, that's when you get people to take the leap. So yeah. Yes. What would an athlete do, right? What would Kwame the father do in this situation? He's going to stand up and advocate for himself so that he can put money in the bank to put his kids through school. Stuff like that. You know, honoring that human element of negotiation, that's what really helped Reba go from this great product that worked that we couldn't give away for free to, you know, now 5,000 negotiations and counting, all the millions we've put in people's pockets. It's been a really cool process just to watch how meeting people where they are. It's almost a negotiation with the client, right? Yes. It's been a really fun journey to watch.
That's incredible. I think it's a great example too. Like everything that you said, and I'll just an aside. It's just mind blowing that it didn't take off. I think that's just so fascinating, right? But again, we are negotiation nerds. We see the world a little bit differently. I think eventually 10, 15 years down the line, your time will come with that element of the business. But until then, human to human contact, that's what's working. And that's great to see. And I think when we think about the identity, because you brought up a really good point, and I think a lot of people in the audience could either personally identify with this, or they can at least identify somebody else who could identify with this. They can negotiate really effectively on behalf of others, but not on behalf of themselves. And I remember talking in a presentation, and I knew the woman from before she asked the question, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm not a negotiator," talking about the identity, but yeah, I just don't negotiate for myself. And I said, "So you have kids, right?" She said, "Yes." And I said, "Would you have trouble standing up for your kids if they needed help?" "Oh no, I definitely stand up for your kids." I was like, "All right, so I want you to pretend like you're negotiating on behalf of your kids. You're not negotiating for you. You're negotiating for them. And I want you to envision them throughout the negotiation. You're doing this on behalf of your children." And so triggering that, just being able to envision like somebody tangible that they cared about, that they were advocating for, helped them to get over it.
Love that. That's I might steal that. I'll tell our coaches to do the visualization exercise beforehand. But it really is true. And I think there are lots of those sort of approaches like that can help people with the mindset, right? There's commitment devices, right? I have already gotten the job offer, and like I got to tell someone something here. Either I'm leaving or I'm staying, or I don't know, but here I am. I got to do it. This actually comes up a lot. People will get a new job and then they're terrified to tell their boss. Like, listen, like, gonna have to have that conversation. But even just like visualizing what you're doing it for, writing down. Like this is an exercise we do for anchoring, right? We will get people, we use a framework called wish, want, walk away. So what do you wish you would get out of this negotiation? What do you realistically want? I mean, I wish that they would give me a McLaren on the side, right? But something realistic that you wish for, what you realistically think you want to get out of it, and where you would genuinely walk away. Actually physically writing those down. We usually have them like take an actual pen and paper and write them down. Then when they get into the negotiation, the first number comes out and it's below their walk away, right? They have already gone through that process. They've already done that thing where they've written down, I will walk away if it is less than X. That sticks with them. It really does. It's you can actually, anchoring is so powerful. You can anchor yourself by writing a number down. And so I love those little moments where you can use what feel like these little tricks almost, but they actually make a huge difference. Because again, you're talking to people right on the margins, because people know they should negotiate and just need that little push to say, yes, I actually am going to stand up for myself. I am going to walk away if it's less than that number. I'll actually give a slightly tangential example here too. This is because a lot of what we do is trying to help people who, for various systematic reasons, end up disproportionately unlikely to negotiate. This is women, minority groups, people who look like me, white man, pretty confident in negotiating, right? I'm used to saying, I want this, and having the world be like, yes, sir. But so one of the things we've been really conscious of is, not just having that mindset, particularly. So the example I have in mind is gender in negotiation. And it is true that women can be disproportionately subjected to backlash for being seen as too pushy. But there's some great research coming out of the Kennedy School. One of our advisors, Hannah Riley Bowles, has done some phenomenal work looking at things that women can do that counteract that bias. So really simple trick. We advise almost every one of our female clients to do this. You blame negotiating on someone else who told you should. Because what that does is it frames it as you being such a good team player that you listen to the advice of your mentor, spouse, parent, friend, whoever it may be in your life, that you can say, they told me I should ask for more. Then you can go negotiate as ferociously as you want. But that initial step to say, oh, this was someone else, counteracts that bias really, really, really effectively. So it's funny how, particularly in something that's sort of as high stakes as negotiation, where, you know, a little difference can result in a big difference in outcome, little difference in the way you prepare. Some of those little tricks actually go a really long way to you know, getting people paid fairly.
Absolutely. And Ben, I'm glad you said that. And it's funny, as we talk, I'm seeing like just a flow chart of all sorts of different podcast episodes this could turn into, right? Because what you're talking about there is negotiating through bias. And I feel like there's not enough research out there that speaks to the fact that, hey, different people are perceived differently. This is scientifically proven. So for me, like in my my last book, I wanted to encourage people to say, all right, listen, bias is nothing more than another strategic consideration. What are the biases that are going to be at play? And now I can work around it. So a lot of times we look at it we assume a position of powerlessness where we say, I'm Black, they're going to be biased against me. I'm a woman, they're going to be biased against me. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But what we can do is we can say, hey, these are the biases that are against me. Roger that. Got it. I have strategies that I can use to overcome that. And it's really powerful. And that example that you gave is a great one too. And I know there are going to be people out there who are saying, you know what? How about people just be less racist or less sexist, right? And 100%, we need to have those trainings and whatnot to help people to recognize those biases. However, in the meantime, you are still responsible for taking care of yourself. And we can't just put our hands up and say, oh, the bias got in the way and I decided not to really put forth my best foot forward, right? So I think this is really important that you said that. I really appreciate it.
I just to totally echo that, you know, so a big part of Reba's mission, right, is to try and help close the pay gap. And it's funny because I'll have lots of conversations with people who totally agree with the mission, but their focus is always, you know, oh, well, we'll change this policy, or, you know, we just got to have more awareness and advocacy about this issue. And that is really important, right? Policy changes can have a huge role. But at the same time, right, those are decades down the road for us to truly achieve those things. And there are people today who, I mean, working with Reba, right, our average increase is $25K. That is like dollars in the pockets of human beings. They can spend them tomorrow. And for me, that's where I really get excited and get my motivation from, is like, okay, let's meet the world where it is right now. And I love that, right? Yeah, there are things working against me, but I might also be negotiating from a position where I don't have much leverage. It doesn't change the fact that I got to assess that situation realistically, think through my strategy, and then go actually do it. It's a really empowering way to think. It's a really, and this is something that I love, is seeing, you know, we have clients come out of working with us and they'll tell us that it really shifted the way they think about themselves. And they'll be like, hey, I can stand up for myself. I can advocate for more. And, you know, you sort of set them down this trajectory. We've been doing this just long enough now that we've got clients who are, you know, coming back, and they'll send us a note and be like, hey, just negotiated a raise for myself. Inflation's high. I deserve it. And I love those stories, just because it's, I think learning that you can do something that's as intimidating as negotiating is a real proof point for yourself that, you know, despite everything that might be working against you, meet the world where it is and plot out a strategy, you can get where you need to go. It's really cool stuff.
Yeah, it's empowering. It reminds me of Atomic Habits by James Clear, where he talks about when it comes to habits, your identity is built up of just repeatedly doing certain things. You are what you repeatedly do. And every time you do something that reinforces an identity that you want to have, it is a vote of confidence of you as that person. So you're changing lives. It's incredible.
Yeah, I do really, totally. Right. It's you vote with your minutes, right? You vote for the kind of person you want to be with every minute and every decision you make in that moment. But yeah, I do, I love that, our impact is not measured in hugs and rainbows. It's millions of dollars in the pockets of people. It's not in the pockets of behemoth corporations. So I love doing it. It's a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
I'll just mention one other thing. So the way we do our coaching is we use recruiters to be the coaches because they just know all the ins and outs of hiring in their different industries.
Smart.
And what's so fun about it is how we've been able to scale up on the coaching side so quickly because every recruiter says this is the most rewarding thing I've ever done. Negotiating on behalf of Amazon or Google or Raytheon, trying to get more money for us, less money for the people I'm working with. Now I get to switch sides. I get to sit on the other side of the table. Like, this is meaningful. This is it's fun to just, watch people be able to, back to that kind of identity, right? They say, hey, I actually have a skill set that is really useful for other people, not just, something I can sell on the open market. That's fun too.
That's awesome, man. I'm happy for you. I am pumped, and I'm glad that we're able to spread this to the world. And just based on the vibe I got from you and how awesome this episode was, I can't wait to have you back on again. But remind the listeners again about who you are and what you do and how they can get in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Ben Cook. I'm the CEO of a negotiation startup called Riva HQ. We're at rivahq.com. We work with everyone from every background, every industry, at every level, all across the country. You only pay if it works. We charge commission only. So we only make money when you make more money. So come check us out, rivahq.com.
Love it. Everybody, there will be links in the description of the episode. Ben, thanks again, man. Really appreciate it.
Kwame, it's been fantastic chatting with you. I hope to be back. This is a lot of fun. A lot of really interesting things that I think we both, shared mindset between the two of us. So love it.